You need to pay the $3,000 bill your daughter racked up at my steakhouse. Those were the words of a man claiming to be the head chef of a fancy steakhouse who showed up at our doorstep. According to him, my daughter had dashed without paying, but that was utterly impossible. I stood my ground against these men who were bearing down on me with fierce expressions. After all, my daughter is... My name is Layla. I'm 30 years old. I live with my husband Daniel and our daughter Emma. I was once deceived by a former boyfriend who conned me out of $3,000, and I found out that I was pregnant with his child. I tried reaching out to him several times, but he never responded. He simply vanished. I was left alone, a divorcee with barely any savings left. Still, I gave birth to Emma. I was steeling myself for the tough times ahead when the news came that my ex-boyfriend was arrested. The man who came to my house for the inquiry was Daniel, my now husband. Daniel supported me as I was worn out from dealing with the ordeal with my ex-boyfriend. Despite our age difference, I was attracted to Daniel, who was strong and reliable. But I was a divorcee. I thought I would never be accepted, but Daniel did accept me. Now we have a good relationship with Daniel's parents and are leading a happy life. Then one day, I received a phone call from Daniel's parents. "It's been a while and we were hoping you'd visit. We would love to see our grandchild." The voice of my mother-in-law, filled with affection, comes from the other side of the phone. My in-laws love their son's daughter, who's not related to them by blood, and I'm very happy about it. Absolutely, I'll let Daniel know as well. Upon hearing this, my mother-in-law cheerfully says, "Thank you," and ends the call. It takes about 5 hours to my in-laws' house. For us living in the city, it's a place in the countryside where time seems to pass slowly. I immediately tell my husband about the message from his parents when he returned home in the evening. "Well, I haven't taken any vacation yet this month. Let's use some time off and visit them. I'll check with my boss if we can get consecutive days off." With that, Daniel quickly calls his boss for approval. His boss kindly gives us approval, and we start looking forward to visiting his parents after a long time. However, on the day of the visit, Daniel suddenly had to work. "You go ahead. I'll head there right after I finish work. I might not arrive until the next morning, though." With these words, Daniel sends us off and heads to his office. I let my in-laws know about the change in plans, then set off with my daughter. When we arrive at the in-laws' house, they treat us warmly, and we spend a comfortable time there. They seem eager for Daniel to arrive soon. The next day, early in the morning, my in-laws head to the barn as usual. I offered to help, but they insisted that I take it easy during my visit. So I waited for them to return home. Just then, the doorbell rings. It was too early for Daniel to arrive. Assuming it was a neighbor, I hurriedly go outside. "I'm coming!" As I open the door, I find a man in his 70s standing there. He glares at me with a fierce expression. Then suddenly, "I'm the owner of a local steakhouse. Your daughter dined and dashed at my place. Pay me $3,000. I was taken aback by his words and blinked in surprise. He then proceeds to explain the situation. Apparently, a young girl came to his store the previous night. Despite warning her that his store was too upscale for her to afford, she forced her way in and consumed $3,000 worth of food and drinks, after which she quickly left without paying. "I found out that she's your daughter. If you're her parent, you should pay for her," he demands. I shake my head, trying to defend myself, but he seems too angry to listen and keeps insisting that I should pay him. "Excuse me, may I ask your name?" I inquire. "I told you, it's Ethan. Now hurry up and pay," he retorts. "I need to ask my parents-in-law whether they know you." "Huh, shouldn't you be more worried about paying me first?" "Well, yes, but could you please wait a second?" I ask him to wait and immediately contact my in-laws. I call them right away to confirm my suspicion. They respond quickly, and I'm told an astonishing fact. Trying not to show my surprise, I look at the man standing before me. I can't pay you," I say. "What are you saying? You don't care if my business suffers. If you don't pay, I'll call the police." "But wait, I think there's some misunderstanding." "There can't be a misunderstanding. I made sure to ask for her name when she dined." Ethan brings out his cell phone to call the police. A policeman happens to pass by. The steakhouse owner called over the police officer and explained the situation. The officer furrowed his brows and glared at me, saying, "May I have a word with you?" I was confused, not knowing what to do with the officer's intimidating gaze. "Your daughter is suspected of dining and dashing. If things stay as they are, we'll have to arrest her," he stated, demanding I hand over my daughter right away. No, there's been a misunderstanding. My daughter wouldn't do something like that. Even though I said this, the officer was unyielding. The steakhouse owner then said, "If you insist," offering a concession. "I'm not a monster. Since we're neighbors, if you can pay, I'll forgive her." "Ethan, are you sure about this?" It doesn't bother me. She's a young girl. I knew she wouldn't be able to pay from the beginning, but she still wanted to eat my food. Isn't that an honor?" The steakhouse owner laughed heartily at this. The police officer's expression softened, and he presented me with a choice. "Ethan here is offering you a solution. Why don't you pay the $3,000 for the food and the drink bill? He hasn't filed a complaint yet, so you won't be charged with a crime." I refused nonetheless. As I opened my mouth to explain my reasons, the steakhouse owner's face flushed with anger and he yelled, "You're spurning my generosity. Is this how you raised your daughter? Don't mess with me." "Calm down, please. Why are you refusing to pay? If things stay as they are, your daughter will truly be arrested." With a bewildered expression, the police officer asked me, "I can't just agree to this." As I was saying this, the steakhouse owner let out a laugh, saying, "Ha, ha, ha, aha. Sorry, you mean you don't have $3,000 on you right now. I forgot. As we age, we become forgetful. Well, our shop accepts credit card payments. If you entrust your credit card to me, I can handle the payment and return it later. Is that good?" Saying this, he instructed me to get my wallet. I refused, saying it was too risky to entrust my credit card to someone else, and offered to go along with him to handle the payment. However, the steakhouse owner threatened me, raising his fist and yelling, "Don't you trust me? I'm in the credit business. Be careful with what you say or you'll regret it." "Why can't I accompany you?" When I asked this, the steakhouse owner started yelling again. "Because you are disrespecting me. Listen, I'm connected with some famous organizations around here. If you can't pay the money, I can still make you pay $3,000 using my methods. That's why I've even called a police officer to handle this legally." As he ranted on, I stared at the steakhouse owner in disbelief. I wondered if it was okay for him to say such things in front of a police officer. Glancing over, I saw the officer pretending not to hear, looking away. "Excuse me, you're a police officer, right? Did you hear that? This is a threat, isn't it? Is this okay?" When I sought help, the police officer lowered his head with a troubled expression. "No, I didn't hear anything. Anyway, if you pay the money, everything will be settled. Layla, please do as you're told." What did this man just say? I could not believe a police officer would say that. Dumbfounded, I watched as the steakhouse owner began to threaten me once again with his harsh words. Any ordinary person would despair at the words of these two. They'd likely choose to pay the money and settle things, but I couldn't allow it. "Aren't police officers supposed to protect the safety of citizens? Why are you siding with the bad guys?" Despite my desperate appeal, the police officer only looked away without uttering a single word. "The police are saying the same thing. What are you going to do? Make up your mind. Are you still not going to pay? Just because I'm old, don't take me lightly." The steakhouse owner glared at me as he said this. It's not because I'm taking him lightly that I'm behaving this way. It's just unbelievable, so I'm stubbornly refusing. Even if I tried to explain, these two wouldn't let me get a word in. As I was thinking about what to do, a taxi pulled up in front of my house. My husband got out.
"What happened? Who are these two people?"
My husband, looking confused, asked.
"Is this your husband? You need to take responsibility."
"Let me explain it to you, sir."
After listening to the police officer, my husband Daniel looked at me with a surprised face. When I frowned in confusion, Daniel seemed to understand everything and gave me a mischievous smile. I've always loved this playful side of him.
"Sorry to have caused you trouble. My apologies. By the way, young man, which department do you belong to? Do you have a police badge?"
Caught off guard by my husband's sudden outcry, the police officer stepped back a bit, but quickly took out his police badge from his pocket.
This is fake." Wait, what are you—"
The police officer starts to sweat. Daniel laughs and says, "Ha ha, just kidding." Hearing my husband's words,
The police officer nervously forced a smile. Next, my husband asked him about his department and rank. Do you really need that information right now? Just curious, can't you tell me? Oh, well, I'm a constable on duty at the police box. Oh, I've never seen you before. Are you new to the area? Thanks for your service. Yes, I'm still new. So, would you mind if I contacted your station? Is it okay to use the name written in your badge earlier, Grayson Martin? As my husband asked this while taking out his phone, the police officer quickly grabbed his hand. Before that, about the issue with Ethan, I would appreciate it if you could tell me whether you can pay or not. The police officer urged my husband for an answer. The steakhouse owner, Ethan, seemed to have been completely overwhelmed by my husband's pace, and his fierceness from earlier had disappeared.
You take responsibility. You're the husband, right?
Yes, but I don't have a job that earns that kind of money.
That doesn't mean you can dodge your bills.
Unfazed by Ethan, Daniel just shrugs it off and says, Oh, well. Oh, one last thing. Can you tell me your gun serial number? What? Why? It's not something I can easily tell you. Huh? That can't be. Knowing the number doesn't mean anything will happen. Or did you forget? This is a widely accepted verification method. As my husband Daniel said this with a serious face, the police officer tilted his head and asked, Really? Watching my husband's response and the bewilderment of the two, my suspicion turned into conviction. Without a doubt, these two are in cahoots. By the way, would you mind hearing my opinion on this dine and dash incident? My husband said, giving the two a stern look. They looked puzzled by my husband's sudden strange suggestion. In conclusion, you are a fake cop who's trying to scam us with that old man over there, aren't you? The two were taken aback by my husband's words. Do you have any evidence?
Yeah, show me the evidence that I'm lying.
At their words, my husband said to me, Layla, bring her over. I ran to the back, and I brought our precious child in front of the two. To prevent any harm to her, my husband Daniel stepped in between us. My daughter's a 1-year-old, so she can't even walk, let alone dine and dash. When I said this, the two were shocked and opened their mouths wide.
No, that's a lie. Is that child really Aria Taylor?
Of course. After all, I'm only 30 years old. If this child wasn't my first, at what age would I have had my first child? When I said that, Ethan, the steakhouse owner, clearly became unsettled and took a step back. Then he glanced at the police officer, who nodded in response to his gaze. Oh, it seems that the dine and dasher was someone else. My apologies. The police officer and the steakhouse owner were about to run off. Then Daniel stepped in, encircling them so they couldn't escape. I immediately retreated to the entrance and watched the two through a gap in the door. Could you perhaps let me through? No, we won't let you escape. You might be scammers. We won't allow it. Don't mess with me. I'm a police officer. If you don't let me through, I'll arrest you for obstructing an investigation. The officer tried to forcefully shove Daniel aside, but Daniel nimbly circled back in front of him. My apologies for not introducing myself earlier. I'm Daniel Taylor, Chief Inspector of the New York Investigation Division. With that, Daniel pulled out his police badge from his pocket. It was a genuine police badge shining there, not some cheap imitation, like the one the young officer had shown earlier. Well, what? Liar, I'm the real deal. Whether you're real or not doesn't matter. You've committed fraud, haven't you? It's a disgrace for a police officer. Do you understand what the investigation division does? Well, what are you talking about? You don't know what the investigation division is? The division is responsible for investigating intelligent crimes, such as fraud, embezzlement, counterfeit money, election violations, financial crimes, defamation, and high-tech crimes. In other words, it deals with criminals like you. Saying this, Daniel quickly took out handcuffs and began to arrest the two. The two couldn't resist the professional, and they were quickly apprehended. Daniel then immediately took out his phone and said, I've apprehended fraudsters on the spot. This is outside my jurisdiction. Please send officers from the designated area over here immediately. Upon hearing Daniel's words, the faces of the two scammers quickly turned pale. But please forgive us.
We were just desperate for money. It's our first offense. Please let us go.
Just then, my in-laws arrived with the police. Are you okay? Sorry we're late. This guy couldn't explain things properly. Whatever. Wait, you're here too. What a relief. My in-laws said that, pulling me and our daughter in to hug us. I had been on edge this whole time, but I could finally relax and breathe a sigh of relief. The two were loaded into a police car. At first, I thought that old man was the only fraudster. When I called my in-laws, I asked if a man named Ethan lived in the neighborhood. My in-laws didn't know the name. They've lived here a long time and know everyone that lives around here. If they didn't know him, that meant this Ethan did not exist here. More importantly, my daughter is only 1. She couldn't possibly have done and dashed. Although I hadn't directly asked my in-laws to call the police, they had understood my situation and told me they would bring the police. When I thought I had to keep this man here until then, I was quite tense, but I made up my mind to protect my daughter. I sensed something fishy about the police officer who showed up. After talking to him for a while, I couldn't stand him or forgive him. Although I didn't have any proof at first, I became sure he was a fake officer due to Daniel's questioning. It was fortunate that Daniel was there this time, but thinking about what could have happened if he wasn't there made me break out in a cold sweat. I'm really glad it was resolved safely. After that, thanks to Daniel and the officer in charge of the area, the case involving the 2 fraudsters were closed. When they were investigated, it seemed a lot of charges were lined up one after another. Daniel sighed and told me the story. He looked somewhat sad and angry at the same time. Also, it seems that these 2 fraudsters were not part of an organization. Their faces became known to the entire country thanks to the news. As for me, thanks to the consideration of Daniel and my in-laws, I was able to stay at their home one more day. Also, the news that Daniel had arrested the fraudsters quickly spread, and all the neighbors brought over a bunch of fancy food, and the gathering quickly turned into a party. Our daughter also seemed to be having fun and didn't cry at all that night. I was savoring my happiness as I looked over at my daughter's face.